Enduring Shadows, a Ukrainian girl's tale of survival. It was an icy March morning, and the air hung heavy with a stillness that felt unnatural. I was 17 years old, standing in our small kitchen, pouring tea for my 3-year-old sister, Katya, who hummed a nursery rhyme as she swung her legs under the table. Mama and Papa had left before sunrise to fetch supplies from the nearest town, a journey that was fraught with risks, but necessary. The cupboard was nearly bare, and with the sounds of war creeping closer every day, they knew we needed to stock up while we still could. Mama had kissed my forehead before leaving, her touch lingering just a moment longer than usual. "Take care of Katya," she said. Her eyes, tired but determined, met mine, and I nodded. I always took care of Katya. I had been doing it for as long as I could remember. It wasn't a burden. It was a responsibility, one I carried with pride. The morning passed quietly, the air growing colder as clouds gathered over the village. By noon, I had begun to worry. Mama and Papa should have been back by now. I distracted myself by playing with Katya, building a tower of wooden blocks that toppled with her squeals of laughter. It was a rare sound, her laughter. The past months had stolen much of her innocence, but for those few minutes, she was just a little girl again. The first explosion came just after lunchtime. It was distant, a low rumble that I tried to convince myself was thunder. But when the second one came, louder and closer, the truth was undeniable. The war had reached us. I grabbed Katya, pulling her close as the ground shook beneath us. She clung to me, her small fingers digging into my arms. "Is it fireworks?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," I said softly, pressing her face against my chest so she wouldn't see the fear in my eyes. "It's just noise. We'll be fine." As the hours passed, the noises grew louder. Shells screamed overhead, and the air was filled with a chorus of distant gunfire and the occasional sharp crack of breaking glass. I locked all the doors and windows, ushering Katya into the basement. It was damp and dark, filled with the scent of earth and mildew, but it felt safer than the world above. Night fell, and with it came an uneasy silence. The shelling had stopped, but the damage was done. The village was cloaked in darkness. The power had gone out hours earlier. Katya cried for Mama and Papa, her sobs muffled against my shoulder. I held her close, rocking her gently and whispering stories about brave princesses and wise queens who always found their way home. I didn't cry, not then. I told myself I had to stay strong for her. If I let myself break, who would take care of her? The first night stretched into the second, then the third. By the end of the week, it was clear that Mama and Papa were not coming back. Not today, maybe not ever. I scavenged the house for food, finding only a few cans of beans, half a loaf of stale bread, and a jar of honey. It wasn't enough, but it was all we had. I rationed it carefully, giving the larger portions to Katya While I subsisted on scraps, she needed her strength more than I did. By the 10th day, the hunger had become unbearable. Katya's cheeks, once round and rosy, were hollowing, her energy waning. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to go outside. The world beyond our door was unrecognizable. The once bustling streets were deserted, the windows of homes shattered, the walls scarred by fire and shrapnel. Smoke rose in plumes from what used to be the school. My legs felt weak as I walked, but I forced myself to keep going. I scavenged through the rubble, finding a few potatoes in a garden and a nearly full bottle of water in an overturned truck. Every creak of wood or distant shout made my heart race, but the thought of Katya waiting for me kept me moving. When I returned, Katya greeted me with a tired smile, her arms outstretched. "Did you find Mama?" she asked hopefully. "No, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to hug her. "Not yet, but I'll keep looking." The days turned into weeks, and survival became our only focus. I learned to navigate the ruins of the village, searching for scraps of food and clean water. Each trip was a gamble. I avoided the main streets, where soldiers, both enemy and supposed allies, patrolled, taking what they wanted and leaving destruction in their wake. I saw things I could never unsee. A man lying motionless in the street, his body covered in dust. A woman cradling a child, her face etched with despair. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Their pain was my pain, their fear my own. Katya became my anchor, the reason I kept going. Her laughter, though rare, was a reminder of what I was fighting for. I told her stories every night, painting vivid pictures of a future where Mama and Papa returned, where the war was over, and where our village was whole again. I didn't know if I believed those stories myself, but Katya did, and that was enough. One day, while scavenging, I stumbled upon a group of soldiers. My instinct was to run, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. One of them, barely older than me, approached. He didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he handed me a loaf of bread and a bottle of water. "For your sister," he said in broken Ukrainian, his eyes soft but weary. "Take care of her." I nodded, muttering a thank you before turning and running back to the basement. That bread kept us alive for another week, but his words stayed with me much longer. Even in the chaos, there were still moments of kindness, fleeting but real. As the months wore on, the bombings intensified. Our village became a wasteland, uninhabitable. One morning, I found an abandoned bicycle near the edge of town. The tires were flat, and the chain was rusted, but it was a way out. I placed Katya in a makeshift seat on the back, her small arms wrapped around my waist, and we pedaled away from the only home we had ever known. The journey was grueling. The roads were littered with debris and bodies, the air heavy with smoke and ash. We avoided main routes, taking forest paths where the silence was both a blessing and a curse. At night, we slept under the stars, wrapped in a thin blanket I had salvaged from the rubble. Katya clung to me, her breath shallow and labored. Her health was worsening, and I knew time was running out. After days of traveling, we reached a refugee camp near the border. It was overcrowded and chaotic, but it was safer than the ruins we had left behind. Volunteers gave us food and medicine, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope, but the war wasn't over. The echoes of artillery fire in the distance reminded me of that every day. I searched for news of Mama and Papa, asking every newcomer if they had seen or heard of them, but no one had answers. Each day, I clung to the small victories. A warm meal, Katya's smile, a moment of peace. Now, as I sit in the dim light of our tent, Katya asleep beside me, I hold on to one truth. We are still here. The war has taken so much from us. Our home, our family, our innocence. But it hasn't taken everything. As long as Katya and I are together, I will keep fighting. For her, for our parents, for the life we once had, and for the hope that one day the war will end, and we will find our way back to the life we lost.